are the 6 key steps to helping aging adults prepare for their future? Well, here to talk with me about this is Marti DeLiema and Naomi Karp, authors of a new book called Thinking Ahead Roadmap. Naomi, Marti, welcome.
Hi, thanks for inviting us.
Pleasure. So in your new book, which you co-authored along with Steve Vernon, you identify 6 steps to helping aging adults prepare for their retirement. Can you walk us through them?
Sure. I'll start with several of the steps. So the first step really is thinking about who you would trust to help you manage your money in the future should anything happen to you. We know that the future is uncertain. That became especially true with the COVID pandemic. And so that first step is really identifying, who in my social circle would be a great money manager if I couldn't do tasks like paying my bills on time or managing my debt or making my investment decisions. The second step is creating your own little roadmap, making it easy for someone else to take over if they should ever have to. So that's organizing your finances, get it in one easy, simple place. The third is having a conversation, and an open conversation with that person that you selected. Make sure they're on board, and also really talk to them about what your values are in terms of money management. Naomi, would you like to share some of the other steps?
Sure, I'll take over. So step 4, we call keep the conversation going. So you've figured out who you trust to step in for you if you need someone to take over or help you. You've had the conversation with the person has agreed, you've got your financial inventory. So what else do you need to do? Well, you need to talk some more. You need to tell the person where your financial inventory is stored, how to access it. And especially you need to talk about how you want your money to be used or spent. And that involves talking about your values. And so part of that, to facilitate that for people, we have come up with a series of thought questions to help people clarify what things are important when it comes to spending your money for the rest of your life. And those are the kinds of things that you need to communicate to that person. Step 5 is what we call make it official. So this is really critical. Your person who is going to be helping you, who we call your financial advocate, will need legal authority in order to be able to pay bills, make withdrawals, manage any investments you have, and talk to your financial institutions, banks, credit unions, brokers, or whoever, the people who have your retirement plan or whatever. So for most people, that involves making a financial power of attorney and giving someone that legal authority. And we answer basic questions about what is a power of attorney, when does it go into effect, what can a person with a power of attorney, what can that agent under power of attorney do, and how should there be some oversight to make sure that person is doing the job the right way. And then finally, our 6th step, we call planning the transfer of responsibility. So you've done all this hard work, you've put the plan in place, you've communicated about it, but you need to think a little bit about, when might I get to the point where there actually has to be a transfer of responsibility? So we have some what we call blazing red emergency signals, signs to your advocate, your person, that they really need to get involved now. And then what we call yellow caution light signals. They might be more subtle, but taken together, they might indicate that you need some help. So those are our 6 steps.
So let me go back to step 1, selecting an advocate. Do you have any recommendations about whether that person should be a financial professional, a state attorney, a CPA, a financial or investment advisor, or could it just be a trusted person in your circle?
We would say that the majority of financial advocates are trusted people in your social circle. Of course, there are many of us who are aging alone or can think through their social circle and say, there is not a single person that I know personally who I would trust to have access and manage my money. So in that case, a professional might be the right choice, but for most of us, it's someone we know and trust.
In all honesty, for most people, if they have them, it will be a spouse or partner or an adult child or some other relative who's close to them. But as Marty said, those are not necessarily always the best people. So you do need to think outside the box.
Right. And when is it best to begin this process? In your 50s, your 60s?
That's a great time to start. In fact, I'm in my 30s and I have a power of attorney, and I talk about money management with my family. But also, I think that around retirement age, is a really great time to start having these conversations and thinking deeply about this issue. And certainly when you start having the open conversations and start maybe sharing in responsibilities with your advocate, adults in their late 70s and 80s, that would be a great time to get someone on board.
Right. And I know previous research has shown that cognitive decline is sort of deceptive on folks, that it occurs slowly, and that as it does occur, sometimes your confidence in your decision-making may stay the same as it was before cognitive decline began to happen. To me, which means that you should begin this process as soon as possible, given the possibility that you may suffer from cognitive decline and be confident about these increasingly bad or wrong decisions that you're making.
Yeah, and I would just jump in on that and say, in particular, sometimes people have what we call mild cognitive impairment, which, they are starting to have cognitive challenges, but they're not at the point where they have full-blown dementia. And many of those people, they still are very functional on most of their activities of daily living, their life. They look put together, they seem put together. And yet we know that the ability to manage finances is often one of the first kinds of capacities to go. So it could be deceptive. And
Right.
People don't even always know themselves that it's happening. So yeah, I was going to say in terms of, when should you do it? There's not a hard and fast rule, but the risk is waiting too long and not having done it. So you really want to do it when you're still healthy, both physically and cognitively, because you need to really think it through, and then you need to take these various steps to put your plan in place.
Yeah.
So people should not delay.
Okay. Are there some telltale signs, people forgetting to pay their bills or paying them twice or other things of that nature?
Yeah, those are some of the signs that it's time to start transferring responsibility. But I want to mention that doing this process does not mean you're giving up your financial decision-making autonomy. This is really about creating a plan for a shared partnership with a person that you trust and has your interest at heart. So instead of leaving it all to chance, you are actually staying in control longer by picking the person or people that you would trust. So yes, signs like forgetting to pay the bills is one. Other signs, maybe paying bill multiple times, not filing taxes on time. I mean, the consequences range from really mild to very severe. And all of that is avoidable as long as you get someone on board early.
I was just going to say, and some of the signs might not even be directly related to money, but, if you're going places and getting lost, or, you're making social plans and then you're not showing up, you're starting to burn things on the stove, those are all signs that you may be having memory or other kinds of issues, and they're going to be impacting your financial management.
Yeah. Naomi, you mentioned some of the thought questions. Do you mind sharing what some of those are?
So there are things like, if I had an extra $200 a month, what would I want my financial advocate to do with it? And so that would get at things like, do you want to give it to a charity? Do you want to help a family member who might need help? Do you want the money spent on you, or do you want to save it? Then there are questions to get at things like your risk tolerance. How much risk do you want to take with your money? What financial goals are the highest priority for you? Do you want to spend your savings while you're alive, or do you want to keep your money in the bank so your heirs will have something to inherit? If a family member is struggling financially, would you want to help them out? And if you were approached by a new investment advisor or an insurance agent who wanted your business, do you want your financial advocate to consider going with that new person? So just various things about things that you would be doing, but if you can't do them anymore yourself, how should that other person be thinking about them and doing it? Because part of their job, and if they are an agent under a power of attorney or a trustee, they're what's called a fiduciary. And that means that they have a high duty of care and honesty and trust. And they should be thinking about stepping into your shoes and acting in the way that you would be acting.
Marti, any initial thoughts on that topic?
So these questions that we pose are not meant to be just hard and fast rules that the financial advocate has to live by, should they take over or participate. But it's more getting you as the person who's making the plan to think about what matters to you in the future.
And I would also add to that, and this is true both for people who have to step in and make financial decisions, but also people who have to step in and make healthcare decisions, which is not covered in our book, but that's, there are a lot of parallels. Oftentimes we hear from those family members or trusted others who do have to step in and do it, that they really consider it a gift when the person shared their thoughts and values and preferences before they became unable to make decisions, because it's guidance for them. And they can rest assured that they're doing what the person would have wanted. Now, you're not going to cover every scenario, you're not going to cover every fact situation, but the more you know what the person wanted, the more comfortable that third party can then be in that role as decision maker, which, it's not always the easiest role. It's we don't want to say it's really hard, but it can be challenging. It is taking on a lot. And the more that you can plan and make it easier for that person to take it on, the better for everybody.
Yeah. So two things come to mind as we're chatting. One is there's a taboo around money. So getting folks to actually want to engage in this process. Any tips on that? And then secondly, this is not necessarily, I wouldn't say an involved and laborious process, but it is one that will take some time and thinking.
Right. So to your first question, we actually did think of that. In the book, we have some strategies for overcoming that resistance and also dealing with the discomfort of talking about money, often with family members. And so we've really thought about a lot of different ways that people push back. Sometimes people equate these types of conversations with death, dying, and disability. And that's really not what this is about. This is about creating a plan that everyone is on board with so that your finances are safe and secure as you age. And then the second point that you made, this is a process. This is not something that people are going to do in one day, especially the process of organizing all of your finances and having those conversations. This is something that you bring up maybe during a family dinner or holidays over time until everyone becomes more comfortable with their roles and responsibilities moving forward.
So we've covered a lot of ground. Anything we missed or anything that bears reemphasizing?
Just to start thinking about this topic early, just as you would think about, if I were to be in the hospital, who would I trust to make health decisions for me? Just a reminder that changes associated with aging and cognitive impairment can be very subtle, and they can be not noticeable by the person who's experiencing them and by their family members. And that doing this is not only a gift to yourself, but as Naomi said, it's a gift to those who care about you and who you care about.
Yeah, and I guess I would add that people often have kind of firm ideas about, especially within the family, how they should do things like, oh, it's my oldest child who's the person who I should, name to be my fiduciary, my financial advocate, or, oh, one of my children lives in town and one lives 2,000 miles away. I should make it the in-town child. And we challenge some of those assumptions because that's not necessarily always the right person. And especially now, and especially as we've seen during COVID, we're all working from home and Zooming with people all over the world and so forth. things can be done remotely and electronically that never could be in the past. So geography shouldn't necessarily be a constraint, nor should birth order or, family member versus friend. It's really got to be the person who you think would be the best. And of course, we have to worry about hurt feelings and so forth. So we really encourage communication, and we encourage communication not just with the advocate, but with other family members too. So everybody knows what the score is. You can find other jobs for other children. So maybe one is your financial advocate, and another one is maybe a nurse, and they would be great to be your healthcare proxy. And another one might be great at helping you around the house. So there are ways to kind of try to retain family harmony and yet pick the person who's best for the job. And one other point I want to make is just, we did talk about the legal arrangement, and people often are really put off, like, oh no, I have to get an attorney, it's going to be really expensive, and they might just not get to that step and make it official. So it is really important to make it official, because your financial institutions are not going to talk to somebody who doesn't have that authority. You don't want someone to have to end up going to court and getting a guardianship because you didn't take care of this yourself. So it's important. But on the other hand, it doesn't have to be that expensive. There may be low-cost solutions. So we don't want people to be put off because there's a legal step, because it is a necessary step. It's not necessarily complicated, and it's not necessarily that expensive.
So the book, Thinking Ahead Roadmap, is available. There's also a website. Care to tell us about that and what people will find there?
Certainly, yeah. The thinkingaheadroadmap.org is the website, just all one word. And there you can download the roadmap for absolutely free, the whole PDF roadmap. You can also order a copy in print, a print on demand from lulu.com. And we priced it at cost. We make no profit from the sales of this book. We really created it through research and as a public service, because we think that more people should be planning for their financial futures.
And in addition to the 6 steps that we talked about, we have other helpful handouts that people can download. For example, we have one for what we call solo agers, people who might not have a partner or a child or a close relative who can step in, and we speak to those needs. We have a financial inventory form that people can use. We have a sample power of attorney, not for people to use, but for people to just see, what does a power of attorney document look like, what typically is in it, and other handy dandy little separate handouts. And all of those things can be downloaded and printed from the website.
Well, Naomi, Marty, I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom about this topic. It's greatly appreciated.